All right, good morning, everyone. It is 8:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. Letting you all know that this morning is being, it's early. This meeting is being recorded. So with that, good morning and welcome to the Local Assistance Day webinar hosted by the Division of Local Assistance. My name is Samantha Soto and I am the Chief of Staff here at DLA. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. We have a big crowd today, so as you all trickle in, please don't forget to say good morning, your name, your agency in the chat. And I'm going to kick us off with just a few housekeeping items. So we are recording this meeting. It can be available for you all at a later date. Agenda and presentation documents, if you all would like to access them at any time, you can locate them either on the DLA blog website, which Sherry Graham, our training and communications coordinator, is going to drop in the chat for you right now, or they should have been emailed to you. For the next, please pay attention closely because this is an important distinction that's going to affect you throughout the entire meeting. And inevitably, we always have to repeat, but please, for these two different functionalities, chat and comments, use the following features. If you have if you have a comment or general feedback for us, please use the chat functionality. If you have questions for our presenters today, please use the Q&A field, which you're going to find on the bottom bar of your Zoom. So this is important that you use the Q&A functionality specifically for presentation questions, so we can track what's been answered, but also follow up with unanswered questions following today's webinar. When presenters have completed their presentation, they will answer the Q&As using this Q&A functionality. Presenters will provide any relevant links or contact information in the chat following their presentation. Of course, please ensure your microphone is muted to deter any background noise. And if you have any questions about today's event, please contact us at caltrans.dla@dot.ca.gov. To receive important DLA email announcements and office bulletins, please visit our DLA blog and enter your contact information in the right side column. You can find this at www.localassistanceblog.com. And again, these will be dropped in the chat for you by our training and communications coordinator, Sherry. With that, I'd like to pass off to our Local Assistance Division Chief, Dee Lamb, followed by our new RTPA Chair, Carl Anderson, for an opening message. Dee, whenever you're ready.
Always a pleasure to be here, Sammy. Thank you so much for coordinating. Of course, Carl, thanks so much for being an awesome partner with this. And of course, all the rest of the RTPA group. Big thank you to the Division of Local Assistance Communication Training Team, as well as Long Beach, to always helping us provide a great webinar, great follow-up that I see come through as well, and then good questions that definitely come through with these sessions. Again, these sessions are only as valuable as how much you take in and how much you carry forward, right? So always looking for many ideas and needs as possible. The richer, the better. But again, good morning, Dee Lamb, Division Chief of Caltrans Local Assistance Program. You know that local assistance fills many roles, always recognizing that we serve you, local agencies, tribal governments, our partners, in delivering your transportation projects. And it's always very humbling to know that it's so collective as a state of what you do. Everything that you do not just affects your area, your agency, but it's a huge contribution to the state of California. The state is one huge transportation network, as we all know and as we all say, but I know without the local network, we can't be complete. So I really appreciate, and we really double down on that level of support and guidance, knowing how important your role in what you do is. So in our the way I see our roles is, and with many other things, is definitely to support you in the delivery, the training, the guidance, the oversight, and so much more. Of course, we can't forget the funding aspects, right? So I think with that, again, it's balancing the level of compliance and the level of assistance. And you're going to hear that, time and time again, because it's a fine dance. And we know, and I want to say we recognize the fact that there is that balance. On one hand, yes, there are federal and state mandates, that we know that we have to properly expend our funds and, all of that good stuff. But on the other hand, look, there is and there needs to be some level of understanding, flexibility, make lots of discussions with our partners at the federal level, at the state level to make this happen. So I just want to note that this morning. I think it's something that, I recognize, and I want to be able to support the team here back at home, as well as everybody statewide. So we got you. We're here to support you. I hope you see it through various improvements that we've, done in the Division of Local Assistance, and quite frankly, the different peer exchanges that I see you do, whether it's, topics at an RTPA meeting, whether it's, separate peer exchanges that I've seen not only at the federal level, but what you do together, those are very valuable. So wherever you see opportunities to even just have those either conversations, discussions amongst agencies, whether you're city, counties, regions, we're here to help in any way. Love to participate, and just my thing is definitely engage. Again, Local Assistance Day is just one avenue, but I think it's a very important avenue that was created by the RTPA group a few years ago. So really glad you're here. I see hundreds on the line. It's super impressive. I think we're close to 300. Really appreciate your engagement here. So again, when we create resources, we create them based on your needs, meaning whether it's improvements to forms, guidance, manuals, again, really high level or even working level discussions with our partners. It's you in mind. And so today, what I asked, kind of to step back with the team and take a look at is, what do we have on deck? What are those, whether it's something new within local assistance or whether it's, I call them hot topics, key areas that we've seen or we've been asked from agencies, let's focus on a few and allow kind of discussion as well. And I think allow time for folks to process these functional areas. So I know we have on deck the ever famous DBE discussion. And then I know we've got our, gosh, who do we have here? We've got our, what you're always going to hear, our different milestones as far as delivery. And you hear this because it's just so important that it's repeated, refreshed, and emphasized, because it helps you with not only you as an agency, but here for us as a means to support you kind of along the way, right? It's how do we get in front of these dates? It's the proactive look aheads and things like that. To me, it's managing that portfolio, and we can't do it alone. So you're going to hear a PD dashboard, you're going to hear project milestones. We're forever looking at, okay, how do we improve that and how do we get that at the forefront? And one thing I do say, for folks on the line that are senior at this, I think your advisor role is so key. So please put in chat, your thoughts as presentations are presented. For folks that are newer to the business here and the local delivery, soak it all in, follow up, use your peers on the line. You're going to see, and as I see, so many folks from all over the state. And I think take advantage of that. I know it's almost like, the concept of networking, and I hope you take that away. Although virtual, I think there's so much that can be done, looking at the list of participants, following up with folks, and ask questions, please. I think it really helps us meter and monitor how we want to move forward with the next session and things like that. So I've said a few things. It's just been on my mind as far as, coming into this meeting, what can we further do to amp up customer service, bottom line? And it comes in many facets and forms. So again, look forward to the engagement here today. Again, really appreciate not only you participating and engaging, being present, but what does it look like for the future training and this particular platform. So all yours. I do want to pass it either back to you, Sammy, or to Caro, who's been doing a phenomenal job with the RTPA group. Lots of good exchanges. And then, so with that, Sammy, Caro?
Carl, would you like to have an opening message this morning?
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Sammy, and thank you, Dee. Hello, everyone. For those that may not know me, I'm Carl Anderson. I am the RTPA, or Regional Transportation Planning Agency's moderator for the fiscal year 24-25. I work in the Funding Policy and Programs section at MTC, or the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization, for the 9-county Bay Area. Excited to be here today. Happy to, serve as a bridge between Caltrans local assistance and headquarters and our regional partners and all of our local agencies. So happy to provide, some sort of context or ask questions from a more local side of things as opposed to the Caltrans side of things. And so I highly encourage everyone to, ask as many questions as possible. Engage in each of the topics, because ultimately all it does is make our state a better place to live. And the more projects we deliver, the more lives we improve. And that's something that really makes me excited about my role as RTPA moderator and as my role over at MTC. So I'll pass it back to you, Sammy. And yeah, I'm just really excited to participate today and super stoked that, there's 320 some people online today. So I'm here for questions and happy to be engaged throughout today's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Carl and Dee. So with that, I'm going to take a moment to run through the agenda for today, which will be shared on screen, but has also been dropped in the chat for you all as a PDF. So first up, we will have our Office of Project Management Oversight with a presentation about critical dates for federal and state programs. Second, we'll have Daniel Burke with Office of Guidance and Oversight to talk to us about single audit report packages and exemption letters. And then our final presentation before closing will be Allison Nealon with our Office of Local Civil Compliance, one of our newest offices, to tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do. So with that, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Peter Anderson, to talk to us about critical dates for federal and state programs. Peter, whenever you're ready, go ahead and unmute and you can take it away.
Morning. Let me share my screen here. Try to get the right screen. Okay. Good morning. I am Peter Anderson with the Division of Local Assistance, Office of Project Management Oversight, and I'll be presenting this section on critical dates. Why is not okay? This is what you're in for. I'm going to give you a brief definition of what a critical date is. I'm going to cover four key critical dates: project end date, inactive projects, time use of funds, and this last one, the combined thing, reversion date, cooperative work agreement. And I'll address how these dates interact with each other also. And I'm going to give you some resources as to get additional information. So what is a critical date? A critical date is one that has been established in federal and or state regulations, and failure to meet a certain critical date may lead to a delay or loss of federal and or state funding. As previously mentioned, we're covering four key critical dates that may impact your project. The project end date and inactive projects are two critical dates that are based on federal regulations and apply only to federally funded projects. Time use of funds and reversion date cooperative work agreement are based on state regulations. The time use of funds applies to programs with funds that have been allocated by the California Transportation Commission, or CTC. And these allocations may be either federal or state funded. Projects with federal allocations will then be subject to the PED and inactivity. Project state funded allocations are not. The reversion date cooperative work agreement applies to all projects, state and federal. And we'll get more detail into that as we go through each one of these. So let's start. Let me bore you with some federal legalese. On December 26, 2013, the Federal Office of Management and Budgets published Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, to streamline the administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements of federal awards. Blah, blah, blah. like I said, bore you with it, but can. Not important. But what is important is the one significant change within that regulation was the introduction of the period of performance. All federally authorized projects must have an identified period of performance for the work being approved. That means any project approved through the E76 or authorization project will have this period of performance. And it starts with the initial authorization or E76 approved by FHWA. There is one exception, at-risk PE. The start of the period of performance is the date PE was first approved in the FSTIP according to the at-risk authorization. When at-risk PE is being utilized, this date is a requirement when submitting the E76 shown on the LAPM3, the Project Authorization Adjustment Request Form. The end of the period of performance is our critical date, the project end date. Here's what is important. Eligible costs incurred within the period of performance are reimbursable. Work outside the period of performance is not, which means work that goes beyond the PED is not federally reimbursable. I've already told you how the start date of the period of performance is established by an authorization. How is the project end date established? It is based on the estimated completion date for a particular phase of work being authorized. For preliminary engineering right-of-way, the estimated completion date for these phases is the anticipated date of construction advertisement. For the construction phase, the estimated completion date is the anticipated date of the board or council contract acceptance. This is the date that the contractor is released from the project. The project end date is then established by adding 12 months to the estimated completion date for potential delays. Again, the PED is established by adding 12 months to the phase completion date. Again, on the LAPM3A, the phase completion date is required to be entered by the local agency, and then the PED is automatically calculated by adding the 12 months. Project end date is established by phase of work. For example, when authorizing PE, the project end date is established based on the completion of the PE phase, not when construction will be completed. Therefore, as the project advances, for example, from preliminary engineering to construction, the PED needs to be updated. But as the work progresses on a particular phase, the PED should be monitored. If the need arises, the local agency may revise the PED to accurately reflect the amount of time needed to complete the phase of work. If the adjustment to the PED is for the current phase and not advancing the project to the next phase, the local agency must supply adequate justification for extending the PED. Again, I want to reiterate, it is very important to be aware that any costs that occur beyond the PED are not eligible for federal reimbursement. If the PED does lapse and then updated, any costs incurred between the expiration of the authorized PED and the date FHW authorizes the revised PED, they are ineligible for federal reimbursement. There will be a gap in work eligible for federal reimbursement. The last requirement is that invoicing needs to be submitted within 120 calendar days of the PED for FHWA to consider it eligible for reimbursement. To assist the local agencies in monitoring their PEDs, the Division of Local Assistance has created a dashboard to report project PEDs. This web link shown takes you to the PED dashboard, and projects may be reviewed by Caltrans district, county, down to an agency. And projects are then grouped by those with an expired PED, projects where the PED is set to expire within 3 months, projects where the PED is set to expire within 3 to 6 months, etc. Projects with an expired or set to expire PED within 3 months should be in the process of having their PED updated if there are any unexpended federal funds that the agency needs those funds. And below the dashboard is a list of all projects based on the filters being utilized. An agency then may prioritize which projects need to have their PEDs updated. Now, I've thrown a lot of words at you, and I truly believe a picture will help explain the period of performance of the project end date. The period of performance starts with the initial authorization. And for this example, we're authorizing PE. To establish the project end date, the local agency will estimate the construction advertisement date. And the PED is established by adding 12 months to that estimated phase completion date. In this case, the construction advertisement. Work beyond that PED is not eligible for reimbursement. When the project advances to the construction phase, the PED will need to be updated. We'll start with the construction authorization. The local agency will estimate the board council construction contract acceptance date. And then the PED will be revised by adding 12 months. And work beyond the PED is ineligible. And again, reminder that invoicing needs to be submitted within 120 calendar days of the PED for FHWA to consider eligible for federal reimbursement. Yes, FHWA has required PEDs to be updated for the processing of invoices. And to get that done will require either a submittal of a LAPM 3A, or we have our smart sheet for doing PED extensions. So before I take any questions on this section, let me summarize just the PED. The PED is a federal requirement and it only applies to projects that are authorized through the E76 process. Local agency has total control of the PED. They are responsible to establish the date based on the schedule of their project. They can be conservative and allow sufficient time to complete the work as necessary. The PED should be monitored. Things happen, delays occur, which may require the PED to be moved out. It is best to update the PED before it lapses. This avoids any gaps in eligibility for reimbursement. And then the PED is updated as the project progresses. Now I'll pause for any questions.
And we do have a couple for you, Peter.
Go ahead.
So first off, from Erica, is it true that the bidding phase, construction advertisement, can be done in the PE and/or con phase for federal and state funded projects? And if done in the PE phase, the date the project is awarded is the con start date?
Repeat that again. There was two. Repeat the first part.
Let's take it in two parts. So the first part, is it true that the bidding phase, construction advertisement, can be done in the PE and/or con phase for federal and state funded projects?
The important fact is that you must have construction authorized before you advertise the project. That is the absolute rule. That's a federal rule 101. Failure to have your construction authorized before you advertise can lead to it's a fatal flaw. It makes your construction ineligible. What I may be hearing is how they, charge their time. They can do either one, but I think the key here is you need to have that construction authorized before you start the bidding process.
Okay, and the second part of the question, if done in the PE phase, the date of the project is awarded is the con start date? Let me repeat that, sorry.
That really doesn't apply to the critical, the PED and the critical date. That really doesn't apply. Yes, construction. So I think we get a couple little things here confused that really don't apply to our PED and the critical date here. But so when the construction phase would start, yes, I would call it the contract award. But again, the PED is kind of a little bit independent of that thinking. So the key would be is that when you did your PE authorization, yes, you're establishing it based on what your estimate construction advertisement is, because when we say you're going to advertise your project, your design, your right-of-way acquisition, all those components, they're by all intents and purposes, they are done. And so that's how we established that milestone to set that date. And then we, like I said, you give it 1 year, we give you a 12 months cushion for possible delays. So, and then if done correctly, your construction then just proceeds forward, like I showed on that one slide, how the PED would then get extended out. So I think I'm hoping answering the question. If they have a follow-up, have them type it in the chat or in the Q&A.
All right, and this next question from Alvin. How often is the PED status updated? Monthly, quarterly?
I believe they're updating it monthly. The monitoring, yes, is being updated monthly.
All right, next one from Christina. Is the PED established on the grant application / FTIP award letter?
The PED is established upon each authorization, and it'll be reported 2 different ways. There is a authorization report the districts will typically send out to the local agencies, and it'll be based on what they submit on the 3A. And headquarters, we will also report the PED on our LP 2000 finance letter. Maybe I should have had those in a slide here to show those examples. And so when we submit, so after an authorization, our office will submit to the agency a finance letter interpreting what the agency has put forward, which show the funding. It'll show reimbursement rates, and it'll have on it the PED. But once again, it will be established based on what the agency tells us.
All right, next again from Alvin. When is the best time to submit PED time extensions? 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months before the PED deadline?
Earlier the better. And the reason is that when a request comes in, it's workload issue. We do have one specialist who handles PED extensions, and it could be very simply that if that, people who are working on the extensions, the workload gets so overwhelming that they have multiple requests that you may not be able to process them on a timely basis, and that if you're given a shorter period of time, it's possible that a gap. Same thing applies to FHWA. It could take them a little bit of time to review and approve it. We kind of typically will say that a submittal of an E76 from the agency to the district and then ultimately FHWA can take up to 2+ months. So I highly recommend earliest possible, and to avoid that gap, having that gap and having it expire.
All right, great. And this next one, Peter, we're going to take in two parts again. The first part, are expenditures eligible for reimbursement if reversion date is older than PED date and expenses occur after reversion date of funds?
Okay, we're getting get kind of thing. So I got to kind of repeat it again, please.
Sure. Are expenditures eligible for reimbursement if reversion date is older than PED date and expenses occur after reversion date of funds?
I'm kind of getting two topics, and I'll talk about reversion date coming up and how it ties in with things. So if the reversion date is beyond the PED, we don't have an issue. If the PED goes beyond the reversion date, yes, we could have an issue there, and I'll be talking about reversion date here in a moment. And so they're independent, but they're not. If the reversion date, I guess, reversion date is a budgetary date, and that date is a hard and fast state requirement that could override the PED, and so yes, funds could expire because of the reversion date. But then it has the ability of possibly getting extended. And once again, I'll be talking about that more about reversion date in a bit. Is there a second part?
Let's go ahead and take the second part after you talk reversion dates. Sounds more applicable. See if it gets answered.
Okay.
Next question from Lisa. What if my project is not listed on the PED end date reporting spreadsheet?
It's possible. There are some old projects that things have been authorized before the PED requirement was established. There are numerous of those projects. And you are in that golden period where, guess what? You don't have an established PED, and therefore you're still eligible for reimbursement. A project does come through for any type of action, then a PED will be established for those projects. But like I said, you go look at that report and you will see, yes, there are projects that do not have established PEDs.
All right, Peter, and I think this next question has to do with our bidding process. If the construction taking place can only be performed by a single bidder due to how unique the project is there an option to not go out for bid and just award the contract to one uniquely qualified bidder?
That's really outside the realm of this training, but I'm going to answer the question anyways, because yes, you do have that ability. You have to submit a PIF, project information finding. Am I getting that title wrong? I think it's our LAPM 12F. I wasn't ready to answer this, but yes, you have the ability. Local agencies have the ability to go with a sole contract if certain things exist, such as that, it's unique work or etc. So that's beyond this. That's a whole different topic. But yes, agencies do have that ability to do that.
All right, and that was the final question.
Okay. All right. Our second critical date based on federal regulations is inactive projects. This critical date is solely based on the submittal and processing of invoices. Projects that are inactive, no invoicing has occurred for 12 months or more, and they are subject to the possibility of having their funds being deobligated. At 6 months of no invoicing, Caltrans considers a project as inactive. Local assistance adds the project to our inactive report generated through FEMA's, the Federal Management Information System. And this inactive report is posted on the local assistance website. As a reminder, invoicing every 6 months is a requirement that is included in the master agreement. When a project reaches 9 months of inactivity and has an unexpended balance of $50,000 or more, the local agency needs to submit an inactive project justification form. The department will work with the local agency for their justification on not invoicing. The goal is to have the local agency submit an invoice, but it's not always the case. A project may be involved in litigation or other issues that prevents the local agency from invoicing. The department will work with FHWA to be aware of these issues. FHWA considers a project as inactive if no payment activity has occurred for 12 months or more. Projects without sufficient justification for not invoicing are subject to deobligation. And future obligations may be delayed. For example, if a project is inactive during the PE phase, FHWA may not obligate construction funds until the PE has been invoiced or proper justification has been approved. And the most critical inactive projects are repeat inactive projects, which are projects that have had no invoicing for 24 months or more. These projects are also subject to deobligation if no repeat inactive justification has been submitted. And the web link shown here is for the inactive projects on the Division of Local Assistance website. And the site provides guidance regarding the inactive projects and includes the 2 inactive lists, the current inactive projects and repeat inactive projects. The question is, why is this so important? Is that when federal funds are obligated to projects, is the intent for those funds to be expended and utilized. And FHWA has no way to know if the funds are truly being utilized other than through invoicing. So if the funds are sitting idle on a particular project, FHWA's mind is that maybe those funds should be better suited for another project. They do not want the funds tied up on projects that are not moving forward. So again, to summarize, inactivity, like PED, it is a federal requirement and is for projects that are authorized through the E76 process. Inactivity is based solely on invoicing. Local agency is required to invoice at least every 6 months based on the master agreement. If they do not do that, then the project will never, if they do invoice, then the project will never become inactive. And if all federal funds have been expended, the project will not be classified as inactive, even if the phase is continued with local funds. Are there any questions on inactivity?
We have one question from Christina. What should a project do if it's not active for 9 months and has a balance of $50,000?
They should be working on that inactive justification form to explain, to justify why they have not invoiced. And working with our office and our unit that deals with inactivity, and with, like I said, with proper justification, they'll be okay. But if they don't have any justification, again, it could delay future authorizations. And I emphasize this one about going from PE to construction. I personally have had that issue occur with me on a project I was working on, that construction came forward and FHWA said no. And fortunately, what happened is that there was an invoice that was in the process that actually had been rejected a couple times because of format and content. But I had verbal commitment from our local assistance program accounting office that said yes, it was ready to go forward. They were just finalizing it, and so I was able to get the project authorized on a timely basis. But it took work upon myself, our accounting district, to ensure all the pieces were lined up to that invoice was, yes, going to be paid. It just hadn't cleared the system yet. So it really emphasized that it can affect future authorizations. Okay.
All right, a few more questions have rolled in now for you from Diane. If I'm counting 6 months from the last invoice, is the date from when I submit or from when the invoice is approved?
When the invoice has actually been recognized by FHWA. So they'll submit the invoice. It'll be actually when FHWA reimburses the department. That's kind of when it is. They don't, the agency, well, agency or step back. FHWA does not see when we pay the local agency, when we reimburse them. What they see is when we get reimbursed by FHWA.
Right. And then the next question from Rebecca. If projects have no federal funding, for example, CalSTO or PFIP, what's the best source for invoicing guidance?
Your district local systems engineers are your best place to start. And they're directly involved with the invoicing, and so they are your best resource.
All right, next question from Hector. If CON project is placed in suspension due to delays in material procurement and no payment applications have been processed to the contractor, how would you recommend this be justified?
I think they said it right then and there in that question. You know, if there is issue in terms of obtaining materials, etc., those that kind of sets the justification right there.
All right, next question from Gaiska. Can you repeat what the date is that the 6 months begins?
It'll be either it starts with when the funds are authorized by FHWA. That's when the clock starts. And then it resets, that clock resets every time an invoice is paid by FHWA.
So perhaps this next question you'll be able to answer. It's asking for clarification about language that is on our inactive project list. So the language is, all projects with an unexpended balance greater than or equal to 150,000 with no activity for the past 9 months are subject to this review, as well as projects with an unexpended obligation of 50 to 150,000, which were authorized more than 9 months ago and have no expenditures. Can you clarify this?
Sorry, I got distracted here. A home issue. Can you repeat? Sorry, it was a long question. Can you repeat it? I can take a note.
Sure, it's asking for clarification on language that's on our inactive project list page. And
Okay.
the language is, all projects with an unexpended balance greater than or equal to 150,000 with no activity for the last 9 months are subject to this review, as well as those projects with an unexpended obligation of 50 to 150,000, which were authorized more than 9 months ago and have no expenditures.
That language is a little confusing. There was a time there was a tiered system in inactivity, and that tiered system has gone away. So really it is 100, it's really 50,000. If you kind of look at the language, yeah, the 50,000 is the controlling number that where they're looking seriously at inactivity.
Thank you. And the final question for you, Peter, is from Molly. Does the 6-month requirement of invoicing apply to state funding after approved allocation date as well?
Again, the inactivity is a federal funded projects, and so it doesn't apply to state allocated funds.
And that was the last question for you, Peter.
Okay. Our first critical date based on state regulations is time of use of funds. Time of use of fund provisions are intended to encourage local agencies to accurately program, monitor, and deliver projects in a timely manner. Time use of funds provisions apply to state programs administered through the California Transportation Commission. And currently, these provisions apply to inactive transportation projects, the ATP, State Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP, and SB1 programs of local partnership, solutions for congested corridors, and trade corridor enhancement. These provisions apply to both federal and state allocations. ATP and STIP projects may be funded with either state or federal funds. SB1 allocations are state funded. And as a reminder, projects funded with federal funds will then also be subject to PED and inactivity. There are 4 key project areas that the time use of fund requirements apply to: allocations, expenditures, contract award, and completion. For allocations, funds are available only until the end of the program state fiscal year, which would be June 30th, of identified in the programming document. Whenever program funds are not allocated within the program deadline, the funds lapse and are deleted from the program. Project expenditures for environmental, design, right-of-way, or the STIP planning, program, and monitoring, PPM, have the remainder of the state fiscal year, and all expenditures must occur by the end of the second fiscal year following allocation. For example, projects allocated in the 24-25 state fiscal year, the funds must be expended by June 30th of 2027. One key factor in the expenditure deadline is that the earlier in the fiscal year the allocation is made, the more time is available to expend the funds. Funds allocated for construction must be awarded within 6 months of the date of allocation. And after award of the contract, a local agency has up to 36 months to complete and accept the contract. After expenditure or construction completion deadlines, there is an additional 180 days to allow for invoicing. The CTC may extend a deadline only if unforeseen and extraordinary circumstances have occurred beyond the control of the local agency that justify an extension. Like an allocation request, the time use of fund extension requests are submitted directly to the Caltrans DLAE in accordance with the Office of CTC Liaison's preparation calendar. The preparation calendar may be found on the Division of Financial Programming's website, and the web link shown will bring you to that site. Like an allocation, typically an extension request must be submitted at least 60 days prior to the original time use of fund deadline to be added to the CTC agenda. And each project component is eligible for a one-time extension. Time use of funds extensions vary per program and component. STIP extensions may be up to 20 months. ATP and SB1 program extensions may be up to 12 months, with 2 exceptions. ATP allocations may receive an extension up to 20 months, and SB1 programs may receive an extension up to 20 months for completion. The office, this will be demonstrated at the end of this session, but the Office of State Programs has developed a tool to assist local agencies in managing the time use of funds requirements. Even though the tool is under the ATP program, this time extension calculator applies to all CTC programs. When using the time extension calculator, local agency can see the time use of funds deadline, the maximum allowable extension, and when the extension requests must be submitted to the DLAE for inclusion on the CTC agenda. There are 2 sources for verifying the time use of fund deadlines: the allocation notification letter and the project deadlines letter. Both of these are generated out of our LP 2000 data system here within local assistance. The allocation notification letter is issued about 1 to 2 weeks after an allocation has occurred. It takes time to verify the CTC action, and this letter will be sent to the person from the local agency who certified the allocation request. The letter includes critical information regarding the allocation, the phase, the amount, type of funds, whether they are federal or state, and a reminder is included for federal allocations that an E-76 must be processed prior to the start of reimbursable work. But for the critical date for time of use of funds, the letter includes the expenditure deadline. To remind you for this example, the project has been allocated in the 23-24 fiscal year, and then expenditures are available for the remainder of the fiscal year plus 2 additional years. Therefore, the time use of fund deadline becomes June 30th of 2026. The second letter is the project's deadline. This document will be included with the LP 2000 finance letter after allocation occurs. The letter includes the allocation date, expenditure deadline, and the deadline for invoicing. So the time of use of funds applies only to funds allocated by the CTC. If an allocation is federalized, then the PED and inactivity will apply. There are four time use of fund deadlines: the allocation, expenditures, construction award, and project completion. A time use of fund deadline may be extended, but requires approval by the CTC. And again, at the end of this presentation, Elijah Hall and Leslie Avila from the Office of State Programs are here to demonstrate the time use of funds extension calculator. Any questions?
No questions in the Q&A field for you yet, Peter.
All right. So our fourth critical date is two parts: the reversion date, cooperative work agreement. This critical date is based on state regulation, and it applies to all projects, state and federally funded, which pass through local assistance. State budgetary law stipulates that the state federal funds that have been encumbered for a project are available for reimbursement for a limited period of time. This is known as the appropriation period or budget authority. The appropriation period ends with the reversion date. The reversion date is the last day that Caltrans may legally reimburse a local agency. The Budget Act provides up to 6 years to expend all state, federal, local assistance funding. The budget authority starts when the funds are encumbered and ends June 30th of the 6th year. Therefore, the funds are actually available only somewhere between 5 to 6 years. Projects allocated by the CTC, the reversion date and encumbrance are established based on the budget year from which the allocation is made against. Projects allocated in budget year 24-25 will have a reversion date of June 30th of 2030. It is important to note that a project's budget year may not be the same as the fiscal year which the project is allocated. And a project may have multiple reversion dates. Each individual funding action will have its own reversion date. For allocations, PE funds will be authorized and encumbered. Reversion date will be established based on the fiscal year of encumbrance. When the project advances to construction, the funds authorized and encumbered will most likely be in a different fiscal year than PE and therefore have a different reversion date. The same thing applies to projects allocated by the CTC. The allocations will most likely occur in different fiscal years. Project funding not liquidated before the reversion date will expire. And California Government Code authorizes the Department of Finance to extend the appropriation period for up to 2 additional years. If the encumbrance cannot be fully reimbursed within the 6-year appropriation period, the local agency may apply for a cooperative work agreement to extend the liquidation period. The local agency will need to apply for the cooperative work agreement in the fall of the last year of the appropriation period. If the local agency chooses not to apply for the cooperative work agreement and the appropriation period lapses, the local agency will be responsible to finance the remainder balance with their own funding. So, for example, projects with reversion date of June 30th of 2025, this coming fall will begin the cooperative work agreement process for those projects. When a project is nearing its reversion date, invoices need to be submitted by April 1st prior to the reversion date to allow sufficient time to review and make payment. Invoices must be paid before the reversion date. The LP 2000 financer will be issued after each allocation or authorization approval. The reversion date is reported to local agencies on this finance letter at the bottom under accounting information. To reiterate the timeline, all projects using state and federal funds which pass through local assistance have budget authority up to 6 years. If necessary, the local agency may request an extension to the budget authority through the cooperative work agreement process and obtain 2 additional years. To summarize, the reversion date applies to all projects funded through local assistance, federal or state. This date is established based on when the funds are encumbered. The reversion date is reported on our LP 2000 finance letter. The reversion date may be extended up to 2 years through the cooperative work agreement process. And from previous sections, time use of funds deadlines, they are more restrictive than reversion date. If a project receives a time use of fund extension, that extension may go beyond the reversion date and a CWA extension may be required. Any questions? I know we have at least one.
But I see that Elijah is actually typing a response, so we'll go ahead and let him answer.
Okay. All right.
No other question. Oh, sorry. One actually just came in from Kevin. For clarity, if we have a reversion date of June 30th, 2024, we need to submit an invoice of April 1st, or what is the April 1st deadline?
Yes, the April 1st deadline is our recommended date to submit the invoice for anything coming up for the June, because they need time to review and process that invoice. And if people get involved with invoicing, know that there are many times invoices could be rejected. And so it gives time to review and handle corrections, because what happens is the invoice must be paid through the state. The state must pay the invoice before June 30th. If that invoice is not paid then the funds lapse and will not be eligible for reimbursement unless a cooperative work extension is granted. So.
Great, thank you, Peter. Looks like that's the only question for you now. Kevin had a follow-up that's a bit detailed, so if you wouldn't mind, Kevin, we'll go ahead and respond to this one in writing as well.
And so I'll let Elijah and Leslie take it over to talk about that time use funds calculator.
Thank you, Peter. So give me 1 second here while I share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay? We're taking a look
yes.
at, yes,
ATP
awesome.
time use of funds.
Perfect. Okay, so as Peter mentioned, we're going to be talking over the time use of funds calculator. So you can locate this resource on our external local assistance website, and it's found under the time use of funds time extension / delivery report homepage. If you take a look at the third bullet here, this is going to be a downloadable link. So once you select it, it will download onto your browser / computer. You'll open it up, and this is what you're going to be seeing. So on this calculator, we have a couple of resources available. At the very bottom of the Excel file, we'll kind of go through all of these, but primarily this first tab, the calculator itself. The calculator's intention is to be used as a tool for you to be able to calculate your timely use of funds deadlines depending on your project-specific needs and specific status. So on this tool, any field that is in yellow, so these cells in yellow are going to be the ones that you could actually customize for your specific project and then receive information back. So from the very beginning here, we have program. This is going to be a drop-down menu, and it'll list all of the programs that CTC and local assistance manages. We have ATP, LPPC, LPPF, SECP, STIP, and TSIP. And immediately to the right here, we have the program fiscal year. And this is going to be specific to when your project and phase is programmed. Also a drop-down menu, you can select the actual program fiscal year. Moving on to the allocation section. The first field that you're going to be able to customize is going to be this project phase field. Also a drop-down menu, you're able to select any of these project phases. P&D, PS&E, right-of-way construction, and construction non-infrastructure. From there, you have 2 rows underneath for allocation deadlines. The first one that we'll take a look at is this calculated P&D allocation deadline. This date is actually calculated from what you inputted in the program field up above here, and it'll give you the automatic deadline. And then the field right up top where it says P&D allocation deadline can be used if you already received a time extension and you already have a different allocation deadline. So just as an example, so you can see what happens when you input a date, we'll do December 30th of 2025. You'll see that a couple of fields changes. Primarily this one here, allocation extended deadline. So you'll see that the deadline has been changed to December 31st, 2025. And on the right-hand side, it will give you the CTC meeting date for which you need to come for allocation. And then right next to it is going to be the actual date when you have to submit your documents over to the district. So in this case, it would be submitting those documents in October 2025, and then it will be going for the December CTC meeting for that year. So going back a little bit here, we're going to go ahead and delete this date. We're going to assume that this project for the P&D phase has an allocation deadline of June 30th, 2025, and has not yet received a time extension. In this section here, which you'll see it consistent throughout the other components as well, is going to be the section that you can use to calculate a extended deadline. Right in this first row here where it says max extension, this is for informational purposes only. Since it's selected as ATP, it will say that you have a total of 20 months, a maximum of 20 months to request if you need a time extension. But right below it where it says extension requested is going to be the actual time that you need for that allocation. So as an example, we'll just say you need an additional 2 months. And again, all of these dates are going to change based on what you customize here. Moving on to expenditures. So expenditures, the first row that you're going to see is going to be the whether or not you want to use the allocation section. It's either going to be a yes or no. If you select yes, you'll see that the form will automatically take this allocation extension deadline and apply it for this expenditure section. If you select no, this orange cell here can basically allow you to specify what CTC meeting you actually received your allocation date. Following the next row for expenditure deadline is going to be applicable to all of those project development phases, P&D, PS&E, and right-of-way, and it basically says that your project expenditures must occur by the end of the second fiscal year following allocation, which is the deadline that you see here. Right below it is the invoice deadline, which is calculated 180 days after that expenditure deadline. And again, this section here, box, is going to be used for any sort of extensions that you request, functions in the same way. First row is going to be the sort of the FYI, your total max expenditure extension is going to be 12 months, but your fillable area is going to be in yellow. And yeah, it'll calculate based off of that information that you input. Moving on to construction award. On the construction award area, you're going to want to include the allocation date for construction. From there, it will give you the the award deadline applicable to that allocation date, which is 6 months from construction allocation. And again, right below is going to be the area that you could calculate your time extension, when it's due, and what CTC meeting it needs to go to. And then lastly, for the construction completion section, the first row that you see here is going to be your award date. So you're going to want to input your construction award date on here. Right below it is something super important to consider, because for construction allocation, an agency can request from CTC to give them additional time to complete construction. And this will not count as a timely use of funds time extension. So if at the time allocation, that's something that the agency did, then you would input how many months they requested and how many months, they got approved. And it would give you the new construction completion deadline. From there, similar to the rest of the components, you have the section where you can input the amount of months that you're requesting. It will give you the CTC meeting date and also when you have to submit. And then at the very, very bottom here, we have the actual construction contract acceptance. Here you can input just that when you accept your construction contract, and it will give you the invoicing deadline, which again is 180 days from that contract acceptance. So that's for this specific tab. The next one is going to be a general calculations tab. Pretty self-explanatory. All it really is when you input your start and end date here, it will just give you, the field itself will return and give you the actual months between those two dates. The next table here is going to give you a date based on the number of months that you extended. And then the last one here, similar to the one that's previous, but it's going to give you the end date for the end of the month. So it's just a general tool that you can use. And then the last 4 tabs is going to be, just as FYI, there's nothing you could really change from here, but the timely use of funds table 1 and table 2 is going to be a summary for the timely use of funds program. And it'll just summarize like the rules, possible extension, number of extension, and key information like that. So you could take a look at this, scroll down a little bit. It comes in different formats, but they're consistent in information and policies. Next is a prep schedule. This one is important to know and save. This has been shared before. On here, we have all the CTC meeting dates and then all of the deadlines applicable, all the deadlines that you need to meet to be able to go forward for that specific CTC meeting date. For local agencies, you want to take a look at that first column here. So, for example, you're going for the October CTC meeting, your deadline to submit for that October CTC meeting is going to be August 19th. For districts is going to be the next column, and then so on and so forth for deadlines for headquarters. And then this last tab here is just going to be additional resources. They're just links for helpful information and forms. And that is the timely use of funds calculator tool. Available to take any questions if we have it.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, a couple of questions for you. First, is this set of instructions available somewhere for reference?
The actual set of instructions is not. For the time being, feel free to reach out to me, Leslie Avila, at any time if you want a little bit more in-depth tutorial about how to use this. We do have that in our agenda to create an instructions. That way it's available for everyone. But as of right now, no. But reach out to me, or you can reach out to anyone in our team. We have Michelle Roshan, who's a part of the ATP, Courtney Ayers, who is STIP, and Gabe Nassar, who is doing SB1. And we could share that contact information.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could drop the contact info in chat, Leslie, that'd be great. I think the second question is the same. Can you send a link to the spreadsheet? So please reach out to Leslie and team for any questions related to the spreadsheet. And that is all the questions. I'm trying to see if any more trickle in, but it looks like we don't have any. So if you want to go ahead and move on to the next part of your presentation, feel free.
Thank you, Sam.
Great. And is that it for the critical dates, federal state programs? I just want to check in with Peter, Elijah, Leslie. Is that okay, that's the final part of your presentation. Great.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so it looks like we are a little early to be able to take break. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute for everyone. So we'll return here exactly 9:55. Please keep your cameras off and muted while we're away, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. All right, everyone, we have just a little less than 20 seconds left. If you could start making your way back, we will get started momentarily. Our next presenter is joining us from the Office of Guidance and Oversight, Daniel Burke, to present on single audit report packages and exemption letters. Daniel, whenever you're ready, feel free to take it away.
Sure thing. And thank you so much, Samantha. So again, thank you. My name is Daniel Burke. I'm from from the Program Reviews and Outreach branch located here at headquarters in Sacramento, California. If you do need to reach me, please send an email to the email address below. We'll be sure to help you out. Today, we're going to be talking about the single audit report and the exemption letter and some of the new changes that have occurred. So the first question we should be asking ourselves, hey, is my agency subject to the single audit report requirement? And that answer is yes, if the total federal funds expended is greater or equal to $750,000 in a fiscal year. What I mean by total is this can include other federal agencies, state agencies outside of Caltrans, as long as those funds are federalized. You may have funding from, say, the Housing and Urban Development Department. You may have something from Health and Human Services. So those are included in that expenditure total that should be greater than equal to $750,000, meaning that you will need to go ahead and submit a single audit report package for the fiscal year. Most of our agencies, I'd say well over 90%, have a fiscal year of July 1 through June 30th. So that is the fiscal year that 90% of you will be using at least. We have a new item though. That threshold increases to greater or equal to $1 million for the year ending 2025. This actually takes effect on October 1st, 2024. So any fiscal year that ends after October 1st, 2024, that threshold will increase again to $1 million or more. And again, this is expenditures, not awards. But you might be asking, what happens if my agency is exempt? Well, you're going to go ahead and email a PDF on letterhead. It should identify the exempt fiscal year, certify the exempt reason, and fiscal manager or officer signature to the SCO and Caltrans. The SCO's email address is singleaudits@sco.ca.gov. And our email address here is the same one for our contact information. It's a group inbox, Caltrans Federal Fund Award @dot.ca.gov. And you can feel free to email the exemption letter to both email addresses at the same time. Hey, let's be more efficient, right? I often get asked, hey, Daniel, what does an exemption letter look like? So here we have a sample for you. The city of Fakeville did not expend more than $750,000 of total federal funds for the year ending 2024. The city of Fakeville is exempt from the single audit requirement. Of course, you can be more efficient than that and put it into one sentence. I'm sure you can be more efficient than me at least. And you're going to have it signed off by a financial representative. Could be a chief financial officer, administrative officer, county auditor, etc. So we just want to make sure it's certified by somebody in a position to make that determination. And it has their signature, and hopefully it's on letterhead instead of this example right here. But both, our office and also the state controller's office will accept an exemption letter. So again, it just needs to be brief. You can do it in 2, 3, 1 sentence. It really doesn't matter. We just want to get the point across and make sure that you're not going to be subject, or your agency will not be subject to the single audit report or act requirement. Another question here, another thing that we're often asked, what does that single audit report package look like? What does it need to contain? I have the federal code up here. We're not going to go through and look at it unless you all brought pillows and blankets. It's pretty boring. I'll break it down for you and make it easy. You need to have a financial statement. This is often included on your consolidated annual financial report, is a pretty typical statement we see from cities and counties. It should have a schedule of expenditures of federal awards. These are going to be the federal funding that your agency has expended down off of. It's going to have a summary schedule of prior year findings. and a corrective action plan that addresses those prior year findings. And it should also have the schedule of findings and question costs. This is your current schedule of finding, current year schedule of finding question costs. So if you're going to be going ahead and submitting the 2023, or excuse me, the 2024 report here pretty shortly, we want to make sure it has the schedule of findings and question costs on there as well. And, when you go out, excuse me, when you go out and you hire your independent auditor or your independent auditing firm, you'll also want to make sure that they've set you up with and are going to include in the reports an opinion on financial statements, internal control over financial reporting and compliance for each major program. These are pretty standard reports we see in the single audit report itself. So again, in general, there's going to be two major sets of reports. One is going to be the financial statements. That's often referred to as CAFR or ACFR, which is the consolidated annual financial reports. And then we have the single audit report, which will include the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, summary schedule, corrective action plan if you have findings, the 3 reports listed below as a minimum, and then also your schedule of findings and question costs. So another question we often get asked is, when is the single audit report package due? So there's 2 caveats for this, and it's the earlier of the 2. So it's either 30 days after the receipt of the independent auditor's report. So we want that after both the financial statements report. Again, that's the CAFR, the Consolidated Annual Financial Report. And also the single audit report is signed by your independent auditor. Or at the very least, it needs to be submitted, or at the earliest, at the latest, it needs to be submitted 9 months from the end of the fiscal year. So again, it's the earlier of 30 days after you receive that signature, or 9 months at the end of the fiscal year. So we have a couple of examples here to walk you through exactly what we're talking about. So the first one, I'll go ahead and provide the answer. The independent auditor signs the reports on August 15, 2024. That report will be due September 14th, 2024. Again, we have the earlier of 30 days. They're taking the precedence. The auditor signs on March 15th, 2025. When is the report due? If you want, you can go ahead and throw that due date in the chat box. I'll give you a few seconds here to answer. Okay, that report is due March 31st, 2025. Again, we're assuming that most of our agencies have a June 30th cutoff date. 9 months from June 30th would be March 31st. So March 15th, we got to submit it, within 9 months from the end of that fiscal year. So it's going to be due March 31st. So question that we need to ask ourselves next, where are we going to send that single audit report package? These websites are a little bit new. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse, they updated their website about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I love surprises, don't the rest of you? This is their new website. You're just going to go to securelogin.gov and follow the instructions. You can either register for a new password, or you might already have a password from the last year. So go ahead and use that site, and it'll give you instructions on how to upload your package, which includes the 2 major reports, the financial statements, again, that CAFR, and then also the single audit report package or single audit report. Next, you're going to go ahead and send it to the state controller's office. You're just going to go ahead and send them the package there, and the financial statement report and also the single audit report. And it's going to go to the sco.ca.gov, and then they have where to submit. They have a new database that they're working off of, so they're going to have you upload it into there. And then, if all else fails, let us know. We'll find another way for you to go ahead and send it out. They should be also be able to have contact information on that website, so that you can ask questions and know where to submit that package. Lastly, please also send your single audit report and financial statements to the Caltrans Federal Fund Award inbox. And you can also update your fiscal contacts here too. That helps us to reach out to in case we have any questions or we see documentation is missing. And, we also need to send out reminder letters too, which we'll get into here in just a second. I'll go ahead and answer questions at the end of this presentation. It's going to be pretty brief today. So what's our role here? Caltrans and the Office of Guidance Oversight, the branch I specifically work in here is the Program Reviews and Outreach branch. We will send out a courtesy email for the single audit report package and the exemption letter. Again, it just depends where your agency falls. We don't know. We have over 600 plus agencies that we have to account for and track. So each fall or winter, a reminder letter is sent out. We sent one out earlier this year or earlier in 2023. Late spring or in summer, we're going to send out a warning letter to agencies that are still delinquent. So again, the majority of our agencies fall on that March 31st deadline at the very latest. We want to prevent that from happening. So we will send out a letter in the late spring or summer letting you know, hey, you're delinquent. Please submit that package in as soon as possible. We're a little bit behind right now. We anticipate getting that letter out maybe in the first couple weeks into September. We're also going to submit follow-up emails from the district to your district local assistance engineer. If we cannot reach you, we do not have the contact information, we'll do everything we can. We'll look at our contact information that we have here at headquarters. We'll go ahead and try and Google your agency, city, and county. If that information is not readily available to us, we will contact the district local assistance engineer and get in touch with either your public works director or your administrative office and have them contact you to follow up on the single audit report submission or the exemption letter. We don't like to be the bad guys here, but we do have requirements to provide oversight and ensure that our agencies can continue to have internal controls in place to administer state and federal funds. So this is a federal process, but we also want to make sure you're able to comply and be able to report and track and account properly for your state and federal funds. So if local public agencies do not submit a single audit report package or an exemption letter, we will go ahead and issue a sanction notice. And again, this is according to section 20.7 of the Local Assistance Procedures Manual. There's also federal regulations that we can fall back on. We really don't want to do this, but again, we need to make sure that you still have the personnel and the controls in place to administer state and federal funding, invoice properly, etc. And what we typically offer as a sanction is no future state and federal authorizations until the package or exemption letter is received. So again, this is future authorizations for new projects. So new projects only. If you have a current project you're working on, we'll go ahead and let you finish that out. Again, we want to make sure everybody has soup. We don't want to take that soup or new projects away from you. And we have some quiz questions here. I'm going to go ahead and open up another file here. We're also going to set everything up here with our host here, the California LTAP Center. I'll go ahead and read off the first question here, and we're going to see a poll pop up on your screen. Anybody who's taken my trainings know that I love quizzes. So here we have our first quiz. And our first question is, what is the annual dollar threshold requirement? And again, a pop-up screen will pop up. Please answer there. Thank you so much, Scott. What is the annual dollar threshold requirement for a single audit report in 2024 and earlier? I will put that caveat in there. Is it A, greater or equal to $750,000 expended in federal and state funds? B, greater or equal to $750,000 of federal grants awarded? C, greater or equal to $750,000 federal funds expended, or D, greater or equal to $500,000 federal grants awarded. I'll give you another minute there to answer the question.
Daniel, we have answers pouring in.
That is wonderful. I'm glad I did not put all of you to sleep. I know this is a dry subject.
You say when, then we'll close the poll and display the results.
Scott, how about when? We are ready.
Okay, and sharing results.
Okay, I was unable to see the results on my screen, Scott. Not a big deal. But the answer is C, greater or equal to $750,000 of federal funds expended. So again, if you have more than $750,000 of federal funds expended, you're going to need to go ahead and submit that single audit report package for federal fiscal year 2024 and earlier.
Daniel, were you going to run your second presentation, or are we just doing it on Zoom?
Can you see my screen up or no?
No, we're still
quiz?
seeing the last one.
Oh, I apologize. Let me go ahead and do that real quick here. Thanks for letting me know, Scott.
Sure.
All right,
Here
can
we
you see
go.
my pop quiz now?
Yes.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So pop quiz number 2. California's Local Technical Assistance Program provides the latest trainings, articles, and technical assistance for our states, local publications, tribes, and transportation stakeholders. By that, we mean our excellent construction and consulting firms out there working on projects across California for transportation. Where's the CalTAP Center located and who hosts it? Is it the Cal State Long Beach, UC Berkeley, Sac State, or that wonderful university in California, the University of Hard Knocks?
Answers still trickling in. We're at 143 responses.
Whenever you're ready, Scott.
Okay. Ending the poll, sharing results.
Okay, that correct answer is California State Long Beach, CalTAP. So their website is www.caltap.org. It is very important that if you have questions on today's presentation, if you have any concerns about trainings or want to suggest any new trainings, need any technical assistance, you may reach to the CalTAP website and contact Scott and his team over there, and they will get you the assistance you need. And thanks again so much, Scott, for hosting today, and also to Dee for her wonderful talk on Cal State Long Beach and her introduction.
You bet, Daniel. Our pleasure.
Thank you again. So last quiz question here, number 3. Commercial local public agencies send the single audit report package. Does it go to your district local assistance engineer, Caltrans and the state controller's office, the federal automated clearinghouse state controller's office, and the Caltrans federal fund award inbox? Or do you just the federal automated clearinghouse? And we'll give a couple minutes to answer that question.
Answers still rolling in. We're up to about 120. All set, Daniel?
Yeah, we're all set.
Okay. Sharing results.
Okay, and that answer again is letter C. Once my presentation starts cooperating here. So we need to have it sent to all 3 agencies. The Federal Automated Clearinghouse is the requirements of the federal regulations. I'm not going to bore you with where that is. The State Controller's Office is the repository for the state of California. And Caltrans Federal Fund Award Inbox we need to have that documentation as part of our responsibility to perform oversight on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration. So we need a copy as well. So please send it out to the 3 agencies. Again, you have copies of this presentation, and it has where to send all 3. We have the email addresses or the databases where to upload those items for the financial statements and the single audit report, excuse me. So thank you so much here. That's all I have today. Now make sure you stay informed here. For those of you who are not subscribed to Local Assistance blog, we have news, updates, resources, trainings. On the right-hand side of the screen, once you enter into this web page, you'll have a subscription box. We only send out 1 email a week. Next one's going to be slated for sometime tomorrow, either tomorrow morning or afternoon. We will get that out to everybody. We also have policy updates, which we send out rather in standalone e-blasts. So again, just weekly emails out. With all that being said, do we have any questions and answers, or any questions in the Q&A box?
Yes, Daniel, we have one for you from Bahadur. Good morning, Bahadur. Is the fiscal year the agency fiscal year, state fiscal year, or federal fiscal year?
Will be the state fiscal year. Or no, I'm sorry, not the state fiscal year. Oh my gosh. I don't mean to lead everybody here in the wrong direction here. It's the local public agencies fiscal year. After reviewing a number of the single audit report packages, the financial statements and the single audit report, we noticed that over 90% of our agencies have a July 1st to June 30th. So that is going to be on the timeline of the local public agency or subrecipient of federal funding. And Scott, I see you have your hand up.
I have no reason why. Apologies, Daniel.
It's not a problem, Scott. Hey, if you're feeling a little bit shy, I'll also raise my hand here on the presentation here so you don't feel lonely.
Thank you.
That is the final question for you, Daniel. So thank you so much for your presentation. Did you have anything else before we move to the next?
I did not, but please reach out to Caltrans Federal Fund Award inbox if you do want to ask a question. Just feel shy about doing so here in the presentation today. Thank you so much, Samantha, and thank you, Scott, again.
Yeah, we really appreciate your presentation. And with that, we will move on to our final presentation of the day. Allison Nealon joining us from our Office of Local Civil Compliance. Allison, whenever you're ready, please feel free to unmute and share your screen.
Thank you. And I am not able to turn my camera on. All right. Can everyone hear me, see me?
Yes, we are seeing your slideshow and your face.
Great. All right. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, Sammy, and thank you, Daniel, for that presentation. I don't know why you said it was dry. It was not dry at all. So hi, everyone. I'm Allison Nealon. I'm from the Office of Local Civil Compliance. I've worked for Caltrans for about 8 years, mostly in planning, and I'm new to DLA, so I'm still learning how you guys do things over here, coming from a world that's completely theoretical when you're doing planning to actually dealing with projects that are shovel in the ground is a really interesting transition. So for those of you who don't know, Office of Local Civil Compliance is actually a new office. It's only about a year old, and we just recently became fully staffed a few months ago. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what we do because it's new. So yeah, as I mentioned, our office was established in April of 2023. Some of what we do is that we review and interpret the civil rights program at the federal level and then kind of share that information with our local partners. One thing that's been a really interesting challenge about being in this role is that we're kind of carving out a new program. So local agencies, when they go to read a CFR, it's not necessarily user friendly. They're not reading those regulations and thinking, okay, I need to fill out this form, and this form because of the way that it's worded. And just, a lot of that stuff is left up to the states to interpret how they want to enforce those statutes. So that's what our program is doing, is carving those things out. And the methods that we use to carve those things out are the local assistance procedures manual. We're developing training, like different videos and presentations and things like that, to make those regulations more accessible and more easy to understand. We also offer outreach and technical support to local agencies. We work collaboratively with the districts to provide that guidance. And then we meet regularly with management and OCR and FHWA and all of our local assistance area engineers. So I do want to take a moment to talk about why this is important, because I think sometimes people get frustrated with programs like ADA or DBE. They see it as another bureaucratic hurdle that they have to overcome, and they kind of lose sight of why we do that. They're just like, oh, I hate doing all this paperwork. But just curious, you can put it in the chat if you know the answer. Does anyone know how much money the Federal Department of Transportation distributed in fiscal year 2024? I'll wait maybe 20 seconds if anyone knows. $5 billion, that's a really good guess. Think way bigger, $1 million. All right, so in fiscal year 2024, the Federal Department of Transportation distributed $271.93 billion. That is an astronomical amount of money. It's a ton. It's more than, you or I can even really fathom. Granted, not all of that goes to one state or one program. There's 11 different subparts that it gets distributed among, and then California just gets a little piece of that. But if you think about it, when we're dealing with that much money, and then we have a history of things being inequitable and certain groups being targeted and unfairly treated, do you think that all of that money should just be a free-for-all and it's up for grabs and free market? Or do you think there should be parameters in place to ensure that, in addition to building infrastructure with that money, we're also making sure that we correct some of the wrongs of the past by making sure that small businesses have an advantage or are able to compete, that a certain percentage will go to small businesses or disadvantaged businesses? I can tell you what I think, and I'm sure that's obvious based on my role. I think, yeah, it makes sense to set up parameters to make sure that a small portion of that huge, insane amount of money goes to make sure that the people who are putting those shovels in the ground have an opportunity to compete competitively. I don't know why I said that. All right, so moving on. Oh. So who's who in my office? Our office chief is Pauline Valenzuela. And then there's kind of 3 people who do the same role as me. That'd be Tracy Cohn, myself, and Jesse Garcia. And we split up the state into different districts. And we are the disadvantaged business enterprise liaisons. So we are developing training, giving support, that type of thing. And then on the other side of the house, we have Aaron Katubig, who is the branch chief of local civil compliance, data, and oversight. And he has Lai Leong, who is the ADA coordinator, Lloyd Tran, who's the Title VI coordinator, and then Vibav, who is our most recent hire. He is the local civil compliance data specialist. And I'll get into what he does a little bit later. It's really interesting. This is actually, we reclassified his role from being an associate transportation planner to being a research data specialist. So we're able to do a lot more interesting, innovative stuff now that we've changed that classification. So an overview of DBE. I'm sure a lot of you know what DBE is, given that you're here. But for, in case you're new or you haven't heard, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program is a program that gives economically disadvantaged businesses equal opportunity to compete and obtain federal funds. Agencies have to set a DBE goal and then monitor the activities and report the levels of participation. So if a contract has a DBE goal, the agency has to verify that the contractors made a good faith effort to acquire a DBE onto their contract, even if they don't necessarily end up contracting with a DBE. They need to show that they at least tried. So sometimes people get confused about what the DBE program actually does. We are not going in and saying every single project has to hire 20% of their work out to DBE firms. It's not really how it works. We have a statewide DBE goal, which is 22.2%. And through a little bit of magical math and gritting your teeth, we set the goal for each individual contract, and we have to make sure that at the end of the year, it averages out to that 22.2%. So some contracts might have a higher goal, some might have a lower goal. At the end of the year, it has to meet 22.2% and not more than that. That's also very important, is that if we do our job too well and we are above that goal of 22.2%, that's also not really fair, because then it's, that we're giving out a competitive advantage to small businesses. So it's a very fine line and a delicate balance that we have to maintain in order to do justice to this program. So our main way of expressing the rules and regulations and what we need federal agencies to do in order to be compliant with this program is we update our local assistance procedures manual. We also develop trainings and resources I mentioned a couple times, and I'll show you the specifics of those later in my presentation. But I'm sure you guys can relate to this. When you open up a rule book or a CFR, you read it and you just kind of get lost in the sauce, and you're like, all right, what do you actually want me to do? So that's one thing that our office is really strategically focused on, is making sure that people actually understand what we're asking of them. So for ADA and Section 504, ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, prevents discrimination on the basis of ability. So, and this is also, it's in employment, public services, public accommodations, and commercial facing transportation. Section 504 requires that any entity receiving federal financial assistance has to ensure that persons with disabilities are not discriminated against in all of those aspects as well. And something to note about this is, let's say an agency is receiving federal dollars for a project. It's not just that one specific project that has to be compliant with these regulations. If let's say agency X is building a bus stop, and they're getting federal funds for that. Every activity that they do has to uphold ADA. You can't discriminate against people with disability in any activity if you're receiving federal dollars, even a single federal dollar. So what does the local ADA coordinator in our group do? She plans and coordinates ADA efforts to ensure that LPAs are being compliant. She does desk assessments and on-site assessments to review their programs. And she also addresses grievances and complaints through the Caltrans ADA infrastructure program. Kind of similar with Title VI, if you are receiving any federal dollars, you can't discriminate against people based on race, color, national origin, anything like that. And that applies to every program that they do, every activity that they do. It's essentially like, if you receive any federal dollars, you are not allowed to be racist or discriminate against people based on ability, even if the dollars that you're spending for a specific project don't have to do with the dollars that you received federally. So sort of just like an anti-discrimination clause that gets applied to every single thing that an agency does. Oops. So additional non-discrimination statutes that were added later are sex, age, and disability. Also, one that is really important when we're doing public outreach is limited English proficiency. And a newer one is federal actions to address environmental justice. Especially working in transportation, this is something we need to be really mindful of. If you put a giant freeway through someone's community, you have to look at the impacts and who is actually being affected by that. It's not just the intention of building the project. You have to look at how it's actually impacting people's lives in a way that you might not have intended. So what does the local Title VI coordinator do? He assists LPAs in the development of their Title VI program and Title VI plan, conducts Title VI program assessments, desk assessments, and on-site assessments, and ensures that Title VI complaints received from LPAs are forwarded to the Caltrans Office of Civil Rights for processing. So this is our newest position. I'm really excited about this one. What does the local civil compliance data specialist do? Our data specialist is looking on how to innovate and improve workflow statewide for all of our activities. So they're building tracking systems, databases through platforms like Smartsheets to better capture and track compliance data. So we're working on an online portal for all of our forms to be submitted for DBE, for ADA, for Title VI. All of those are going to be in one place online. That's going to be set up with a calendar sort of thing so that an agency can see, oh, I have to do this form annually, or I have to do this form after bid, so that it's less confusing for them about what we expect. It's also going to track which firms actually bid on projects to see which ones are active. This is a complaint that I hear from our district partners all the time, is that, you know, the DBE goal is set based on how many firms are in the area. So you might have firms, you know, let's say there's 20 firms that are registered in a geographic area, but really only 3 of them are actively bidding on projects. This is information that we're going to be able to track going forward so that we can more fairly and more accurately set the goals. Another thing that the LCC data specialist does is digitize information to make it more accessible so that we avoid silos. Especially when we're working with, you know, paper documents, it's really hard to get information sometimes. So now that we're putting all of that online, we can all share it from the district to headquarters to our local agencies. We're all going to be on the same page and working from the same documents. So as I mentioned before, we've been developing a lot of training and really buffing up our website, making it way stronger. We're continuously updating it with new resources. Each of our programs has a pillar on our website that you can go to learn more about that specific program. And then we also just rolled out a new Knowledge Center page. What's super exciting about this is that it has on-demand trainings for any given topic. So if you were to go visit it right now, you could get a PDF on how to set your DBE goal, or you can watch a video where I show you step by step how to search the database and how to calculate the goal. We're constantly adding new topics. Some that we're working on right now are on-call contracts. We're also looking into oh my gosh, alternative delivery. So things like on-call contracts. Yeah, I'm super excited about the website. So do we have any questions?
Looks like we have one question, excuse me, a couple questions rolling in. Not sure if I've seen the D7 contact person on the org chart. So perhaps Allison, if you're able to provide the link to the org chart in chat, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so the district contacts are actually on my next slide right here. So if you have a project specific question, this is your first line of defense in terms of who to contact. You're going to reach out to your district DBE coordinator, and for District 7, that would be Vitavet.
Okay, so this next question has a bit of a narrative to it, and then I'll post the question. Currently, our agency has an RFP for engineering design services. This has a DBE goal of 10%. The LAPM mentions that local agencies are satisfied that the consultants organization is not disbarred or suspended from state or federally funded contracts. Ensuring the requirement is met, our agency included Caltrans debarment and suspension certification form for fiscal year 24-25. Does this form have to be signed by an attorney, or may this be signed only by the proposing firm president owner?
All right, let me look at this question. This is very in the weeds. Is this a question about termination and replacement? It says the goal is 10%, but it also talks about disbarment. So it seems like it might be related to terminating an agency from a contract after they've been awarded.
So perhaps,
Yeah.
Hector, can you clarify with a follow-up, and we can circle back? Allison, would that work for you? Or are you comfortable answering this question as is?
Oh, yeah, let's circle back on that one.
Okay, great. Next question, how long until the online portal is live?
So it depends on what district you're in. Some districts are already beta testing the online portal. In terms of when we roll that out to the rest of the state, I'm not sure. I would have to ask our data specialist about that, but it is currently being tested.
And just a reminder to the audience, all of these questions we're able to track in question and answer. So if we can't get you an answer right now, we will circle back and respond to your questions following the webinar. Next question for you, Allison. Who ensures that the DBE consultants are actually getting work on the project, or actually get work on the project, excuse me?
Or actually, so I'm not sure how to interpret this question. One way to interpret it is that who is going to make sure that an agency doesn't just get together with a DBE firm and say, hey, why don't you pretend to do this work on my contract so that I can be awarded the contract? That's something that we take very seriously and actually can result in prison time. It's pretty serious fraud. I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, or if you're more getting at, who makes sure that an agency actually tries to get a DBE firm onto a project, or whether or not they just, blase blah, don't really make an effort and then submit a good faith effort request. Because that is something that I maybe didn't clarify in the presentation, is that when you set a DBE goal, it's an aspirational goal. You're saying, I'm going to try to contract out at least 20% or 18% of my work to a DBE. You don't necessarily end up having to do that at the end of the day if you made a good faith effort. And that's something that you'll have to submit if you don't meet the DBE goal to my office and OCR.
Next question for you. What is acceptable as we tried to get a DBE but couldn't select or qualify one?
This is a great question, and one that we get a lot. So we do offer trainings on good faith efforts, but there's no real short answer. I can tell you, if you do X, Y, and Z, then that's good enough. Everything is, qualitative. You have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and assess whether or not somebody truly made a good faith effort. And it is something that can be contentious sometimes. We all the time, my office deals with complaints from DBE firms who feel like they weren't given enough consideration, and that type of thing. So there's no short answer, but we do offer sort of best practices for ensuring that you've done a good faith effort. And those are available on our website, or you can reach out to me or your district DBE coordinator in order to find out what you would need to do to protect yourself.
And it looks like that is the entirety of the questions for you, Allison. Did you have anything else for the audience?
No, just want to say thank you guys so much for having me this morning, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. And with that, we are ready for our closing comments. Carl Anderson, once again, our RTPA moderator. Carl, are you available to close us out with some comments?
Yes, I am, Sammy. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
All right, perfect. And sorry for any background noise. I'm on my way to the CTC meeting via train, so apologize if anything comes through. But just want to thank everyone, especially for all the Caltrans and Long Beach staff for putting this together. I know this is a invaluable resource that is an excellent resource to be shared with everyone that participates. And so to all the local agencies, please do to your local RTPAs if you need help navigating any of these processes, in addition to your local assistance to the district offices too. So just want to thank everyone again, and feel free to reach out with any questions if I can be of help with anything along the way.
Thank you so much, Carl. And to all of our presenters today, as well as Long Beach for hosting, Sherry, Daniel, for your partnership in helping run this webinar. Please, before you log out today, leave any feedback for us regarding this webinar and future topics you would like to see in the chat. We're here ultimately to support you as our customers and our district representatives, but we do rely on your feedback to help guide future presentations and know where to guide you. So with that will conclude today's Local Assistance Day webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Presenters and meeting hosts, if you could stay online for a debrief. Everyone else, thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Local Assistance Day date to be announced.